Good to see familiar faces here. So welcome to the first Riva and David Logan Symposium on the Artist Books. We plan to do this at least a couple more years, and this first year's theme you see here. I'd like to welcome all my old friends here, and especially like to welcome new faces I see in the audience, and my colleagues from the Achenbach Foundation, Karen Brewer, the curator in charge, Jim Gans, Debbie, and all the rest of you. Thank you for coming. And most importantly, I'd like to welcome Jonathan Logan and his extended family, board members from the Jonathan Logan Family Foundation today. My name is Steve Woodall. I am the collection specialist for artist books at the Achenbach Foundation for Graphic Arts. And this is why we're here today. Riva and David Logan. This is our primary contact at the Achenbach over the years, David Logan. David was a great philanthropist who had a very personal investment in the projects the Logan Foundation supported. The foundation has invested in progressive political and cultural influences much the same way you would invest in a business. And in my view, with success equal to David's success with his other investments, the Logan family has continued to support those values and with continuing success. Over 20 years, the Logans, based in Chicago, assembled one of the most important American collections of 20th century artist books. In 1998, the Logans' donations to the Achenbach Foundation at this museum formed the Riva and David Logan collection of illustrated books. Broadly historical, the collection represents virtually every important art movement of the 20th century. You'll see a number of those books in our galleries today. Please be sure we're going to try and finish this symposium on time so that you'll have at least some time to see the exhibition, The Recent Gifts from the Logan Foundation, out in the hallway. That exhibition closes tomorrow, so if you haven't seen it, there's some of the greatest books, greatest artist books ever produced in that show. So that show was actually held over so it could be open for this symposium. One thing the museum did as part of its agreement with the Logans was dedicate a permanent gallery to the display of artist books. It's the only such gallery at any art museum in the United States. And the exhibition that opened there today, Historic Futures, was designed to complement this symposium. So the Logan Foundation has continued to support artist books here at the Logan by funding a 3-year initiative beginning this year to create greater public and scholarly engagement with the collection. With the initiative, we're addressing the fundamental issue with artist books at a museum. That issue is this. This is the fundamental problem for us in showing artist books. These are very valuable works of art, and the only way they can be experienced. The artist book is the only work of art that I know of that must be handled to be even experienced, much less appreciated or evaluated. So the best we can do with that in creating greater public and scholarly engagement with the collection is to devise remediations. And we have several of those in the works now. One of them is this symposium, and there will be more public events like this. We are making a greater investment in the gallery. One thing that we were doing is we have convinced, through the efforts of Debbie Evans and others, to put our gallery on a schedule of 3 exhibitions a year instead of 2. We are also bringing in a video monitor in the very near future to augment the exhibitions in that gallery. I'll be teaching an 8-week class on the artist book with many guest speakers beginning in January for the Achenbach Graphic Arts Council, the support group. I've left some brochures for AGAC up by the front door, so if you're at all interested, please pick one of those up. But a major effort of our initiative will be to create expanded digital versions of books in the collection. One of them will be an index and guide to the collection as a whole, and the other will be dedicated to a single important work in the collection. And work on those apps is now in process, and it's a very exciting thing. We have great resources at this museum, and we're going to put them all to work toward realizing this kind of unique electronic publication opportunity. And finally, 90% of anything is showing up, I think. And because the initiative created my position here as a part-time position, the election is through my efforts, but also partly because of my very presence here, I think, achieving a higher profile for the collection within the museum. So this is my contact information, and if you're at all interested in joining with our efforts and would like to put together a group to come in and get a docent tour of the exhibitions, or have any suggestions or questions for us, please get in touch with me. So thank you and welcome. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker today. Our program will begin with a keynote address. It'll proceed to 3 shorter presentations with discussion and questions from the audience, then a break, and then our final segment with Emily McFarish and Clifton Metter, who will discuss their working process as book artists. I think it's going to be a great segment. So I hope many of you, or all of you, I hope, can stay for the full program today. Stephen Burry is the Andrew W. Mellon Chief Librarian at the Frick Art Reference Library in New York. He has a BA in Modern History from the University of Oxford, an MA in Victorian Studies, and a PhD on John Ruskin from the University of London. He was the chair of Bookworks, UK, and is currently chair of the Center for Book Arts in New York. His recent publications include Artist Books, a new edition of that came out last year, Artist Multiples, and Breaking the Rules. So please join me in welcoming Stephen Burry.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve, for your invitation to speak here. And I'd like to add my thank you to the Logan Family Foundation for this initiative. And I'd also like, on a personal note, to thank Charles and Sandra Hobson for their hospitality. I've been working with Artist Books for quite a while now, and I first did a book in 1995 based on the collection at Chelsea School of Art, London. And last year, I republished with an update up to 2000 when I left Chelsea to work at the British Library. And in what I call the pre-preface for the second edition, I sort of reflected on what had happened in those 20 years, and if anything I'd said in 1995 was still valid or not. The first bit of validity was the definition. And my definition really involves the involvement of an artist in the final appearance of the book. It's not an exclusive thing. It would cover the livre d'artiste. It would cover the printed conceptual book as well. But of course, there is a sort of what Freud would describe as the Gnosticism of marginal difference, where everybody in the world is interested in artist books, but they have their own definition, and they're internecine wars with one another, but we're all in the same good cause. One thing I did say, which was that the artist book could not be a book about an artist. And of course, immediately, Greg Allen reverses that by producing the transcripts of the Richard Prince trial, which is actually, this is the finest monograph on Richard Prince. I think Greg just purposefully just refuted my definition. The other thing I said in the 1995 edition and repeated in the 2015 one was that, in a sense, the arrival of the e-book meant that the burden of conveying information was taken away from the physical book, and the book could be something else. And I think that's the important part in the sort of ongoing progress of the artist's book. It's still a valid medium, and the use is increasing rather than diminishing. Back in 2007, I did an exhibition at the British Library called Breaking the Rules, which Stephen referred to. And it was using the European avant-garde roughly from 1900 to 1937, and looking at their involvement with the print rather than with painting or sculpture or whatever else. So they were producing manifestos, small magazines, little magazines, and artist books, photo books. So I tried to relegate any two-dimensional works of art other than print in this exhibition. I did fail when one of my curators smuggled in a Georgian painting and we couldn't return it without upsetting the government of Georgia. That's Georgia in the Caucasus. At the same time as Breaking the Rules, I had another exhibition going on, or rather I was part of that exhibition. It was called Cunningham Chapters, organized by Susan Johannecht, who is the head of the Campbell MA Book Arts. And my contribution was a manifesto for the artist's book. And what I'm going to do with the rest of this talk is go through this manifesto and hopefully reinforce why the book persists. Firstly, I said in one of these paragraphs, I can't remember which one now, in the third one on the left, by metonymy and sequence, narrative is generated amongst the pages. Books consist of one damn thing after another, one damn thing before another, and one damn thing next to another. So we're going to do the one damn thing first. I think the idea of sequence, if you imagine it's a sort of journey, and there are wonderful artist books that have been about a journey. We have the Sanders and Delaunay here of the prose of the Trans-Siberian, and this is where the Petit Jehan de France with a prostitute travels on the Trans-Siberian until they're forced back by the war between Russia and Japan. And there's a recurring line, which I always translate as, "Are we there yet?" It's a pochoir, which is a sort of stencil process. Sonia Delaunay did the decoration, and the poetry is by Blaise Cendre. The text is a mixture of typefaces and sizes. I think there are 20, and technically that's what's known as paragonage. Anyway, they get back to Paris, and it finishes up with the Eiffel Tower, which you can see at the bottom. Apparently, if you put the 150th this edition end to end, that would be the height of the Eiffel Tower. Nobody's physically done that, but only 60 of these were produced. Another journey would be Ed Ruscha's 26 gasoline stations, which is a real road trip, and you can plan the journey from where these gasoline stations are. They're banal, straightforward photographs of gasoline stations. Other artists have used the artist's book as a way of promoting their art outside of the gallery. Of course, that's impossible. When you become a famous artist, the gallery system adopts you, and you have to produce work for it. Now, this is, in fact, not an artist's book, but for me, it looks like an artist's book, with the line looking like the gutter that you get between recto and verso when pages are open. But a real book that Richard Long did was this series of rivers of the world. It's called Papers of River Mud, where there is no illustration, there's no text other than the titles of the river, but the paper is made from literally river mud in it. We bought this at the British Library way back, and the conservation department immediately got suspicion and got sort of radioactive tests done, and it ended up being wrapped up in this huge bubble, which is quite... I got an interesting slide of that, but I didn't add it to this presentation. Now, another journey, this is an example of a really basic way of producing a work, an artist's book. It's taking a bit of paper, in this case an A4, which is the English-European style, and folding it several times like this, and hope you can see this. I'm making a book like that, tearing off the ends like that, and you've got a book. There you go. You can all make one when you get bored with this talk. This is by an English artist called Stevie Diaz, and it's made that way. It's called Clean Skins. The title Clean Skins appears nowhere on the book. And if you were a librarian, you wouldn't be able to title it Clean Skins. Clean Skins refers to a terrorist subject who nobody knows about, only when they commit an offense. And in the July bombings, there was a bus that was blown up on Bedford Square, number 30 bus. It was off course. It wasn't on the proper route that day. The artists in the content of this created illustrations by having a pen on his knee, recording the journey, and the movement, the stops and starts, the accelerations and the hills and whatever. So that's the way this book is. Very simple idea, very simply produced. You can see the staples that hold this very simple book together. The book's also very useful for taxonomy and typology. So in this case, Solowit's 5 cubes. It works just as well for illustrations. This is photo grids. We're looking at geometrical shapes in the city. Right, the next idea here is, going back to that manifesto, is that the book is, I said, intermittently a 3-dimensional object. So we're going to look at the 3 dimensions. My first example would be what's known as the Tin Book by Marinetti and Tullio del Bissola. This is a rather strange book. You can see the left binding is a tube, and all the pages run on a metal sort of line, and it's hinged into this final container. And for me, this creates a sort of idea of the total work of art, a Gesamtkunstwerk, which involves all the senses. So this would invite comparisons with sound. You can knock on it and it rattles. You can see it, obviously. You can touch it, obviously. You can smell it, because the lithographic inks are still, after 80, 90 years, you can still smell them. And theoretically, I suppose you could taste it, but I don't think your dentist would recommend that. And again, touch, and this is one of my favorite books. I will say that about several of these books in this show. But this is a really edition of 4, and each is actually unique. And it's made from animal skins. This is the British Library's one in a leopard skin. There's a rabbit skin, English rabbit skin, which is in the V&A. And I think there's a mink one, I don't know who has that one, and imitation deer skin, I think is the fourth one. But this refers also to the way that original books were produced in the illuminated manuscripts. Skins of animals, cows, whatever, sheep were scraped, and then they were processed so writing and illumination could take place. So this again refers to that sort of process and the fact that books depend on this killing of animals. Not a book for vegetarians. Three-dimensional, I think some of you will be familiar with Ron King of the Circle Press, which was based in London. I'll be showing another slide later on. And Anansi was a sort of African trickster, and his sort of life story, and a poem by Roy Fisher, is told, and you can actually take out the puppets and enact the story. So this is really a book that gets into the 3D in a big way. This, of course, is Dieter Roth, who I've had a very mixed sort of relationship with in terms of liking and disliking. I now really like his work, but there was a place when I didn't really like them. This is the literature sausage, and as it's 1969, this is actually a real skin, sausage skin, and there are German magazines chopped up that replace the meat, and they're mixed with lard or gelatine and spices and put into these objects, which may be in a edition of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And Angela Lorentz, some of you will know Angela's work quite well. This sort of image is slightly confusing with the red background, but if you imagine that the center of the black is the actual work of art, the bookwork, and it's like a canvas coat hanger, reduced size, and there's like a sort of coat hanger bit which holds the pages. But the text is done so minutely on it that you actually have to expand the latex to physically read it. So again, it's involvement in the physicality of the medium. And my last example on the 3D is arguably not even a book. Fiona Banner, whose NAM I'll be showing later on, this is her multiple table stops, which appears in my multiple book, where she's made sculpture additions to various different typefaces of punctuation marks, which may be clang, slipstream, avant-garde, neutral, formata, optical, and courier. You can all identify those later in the competition. But this also reminds me of the Russians, and I think the early avant-garde Russians in the 20th century really did everything that we were just rediscovering in many ways. And the poet Klebnikov, his brother-in-law, was the sculptor Piotr Mitscherich, who did a spatial alphabet, which was very similar to this. Now, going back to my manifesto again, I was insistent that the book has a relationship with the reader. And this is, you could have that on an e-book, but I think the physical relationship is a very different relationship. So we start with one extreme, with Anselm Kiefer, whose lead books may take several people to actually move them and turn the pages, so they're not often, you can't really take these to bed. Or you could, but you'll never get up. And the other extreme is the Aspen magazine. This was an avant-garde magazine in the 70s, edited by Phyllis Johnson. It's literally a box, and the reader has control of what they look at first. So the editor, the compiler of this material, has no idea what you'll do with it. And in between those extremes, we have something like Keith Goddard's Glue book. Notoriously, I've said this is one of the most interesting books and one of my least favorite books. I hope that's not going to be streaming on the website. I always show this, but it is really interesting because it has this Dow Corning glue that holds the pages together. So this book has a final reader as they tear the pages, opening the book. It's a nightmare for an art librarian. Similarly, an English artist this time, Tracy Mckenna, did a project with the Barbican Gallery in London, and it's called Bulk. And you can actually rip off the pages and discard them as litter as you go through them. So again, it's a bit like the Italian artist Nanucci, who had Artist Social Environment, which again was a sort of litter project. Now, going back to the manifesto yet again, I've invented this word bookliness. We can debate if it means anything at all. And the idea behind this is that the book should refer to itself. It's almost like a Greenbergian definition of a painting, where it should refer to the fact that it's two-dimensional and it's paint on a surface. So a book could also refer to its bookly qualities. So the obvious example is Michael Snow's Cover to Cover, which is based on this idea of recto verso, where the recto, which is the one on the left, and the verso, the one on the right. So it's like a 360-degree relationship. And there are 360 degrees pages in this book to emphasize that. Snow is a filmmaker, and there's a lot to be said for exploring that relationship between the artist's book and film, but I think that's another talk. And that's another page here. But the irony of this, that to succeed the project, you can't really have a title page, but here you can see on the right-hand side that there is a sort of transparent title page, which I think ruins the book when it's open, and a lot of libraries have taken this page out. Susan Hiller, who's an American artist based in London, has done various projects, and this was one, Rough Sea, concerned with found postcards of literally rough seas. And you get this idea, as you turn the pages, of the waves hitting the beach or whatever we're on. And the artist Boetti, for example, did classifying all the longest rivers in the world, where he just has a sentence describing where the river starts and where it ends, how long it is, and then you turn the page. So you get some sense of the waves and current in that too. I'm not going to dwell too long on Tango with Cows, because another speaker is going to address that. But again, the point I made that the Russians really did everything that we're walking in the shadows of. But I'm comparing it here to the other book in the red frame, George McEunice, Flux Paper Events, which really mirrors all the processes that go into making a book. So books are about folding, they're about trimming, they're about stapling and fixing, and once they're made, they're about tearing them and dirtying them and all the other things, and folding them and all the other things that you might mistreat them with. But I just can't resist doing another Kamensky slide. And this is the famous, the sort of art gallery at the Trubetsky Palace that belonged to one of the big collectors. His name was Shushkin. And in what's described as on the right-hand side, which is a ferroconcrete poem, and you can see Matisse's name on the bottom left. Matisse. I can point that out to you with this, if I can get this to work. Matisse, and that's So all the artists. So this is a sort of an early concrete poetry guide to a museum. And just the simple technology of just distorting the page that you're used to, using wallpaper. I recommend you don't put that through the printing press because you'll destroy the plates. But it's a wonderful production, and I look forward to hearing more about it later. Back to Ron King. This is, well, it was Ron King's last book, but I hear that he's going back into making books again. And it's called Tabernacle, Hall, Horse, and Hellbox. A hellbox is somewhere where you put broken type. The hall is an unlicensed printing office, and the horse is a sort of device for stacking paper as you print it. And it refers to Ron King discovering that his family were printers, so it made sense for it to be his last book, but now he's going back into the business. But it's very three-dimensional, and it actually sits in a huge box, like a sort of printing cabinet itself. Now back to our friend Dieter Rott, and I'm now going to talk about some of the physical qualities of the book. This is a remake of a Bock 3B, which was a very small edition, I think 3 or 4. And Hans-Jörg Meyer from Stuttgart and London did an edition, a sort of collected works of Dieter Rott. And this is quite a thick volume, and you would expect it to be really heavy, but it defeats its heaviness by having all these drilled holes through it. So there's like this play on something you expect to be heavy, and it's not. Literally heavy is Fiona Banner's The Nam. This was based on an exhibition at the Frith Street Gallery in London. And the text really comes from sort of 6 Vietnam buddy movies: Deer Hunter, Full Metal Jacket, Apocalypse Now, Born on the 4th of July, Hamburger Hill, Platoon. And what she did was she turned off the sound on the film, and she actually describes what's going on, and then she transcribes her so it's a bit like as a Japanese theatre where you have somebody accompanying the film, kabuki, I think, style. And it's really what we call in England a pavé, which is like a French paving stone of a book. Now, there's another aspect of the book which I don't think translates to the e-book, and that's the sort of feeling of intimacy that you get. I was going to show another example, but this is the one I had available. This is from the software exhibition at the Jewish Museum, I think in 1971. And people at the exhibition were invited to put a secret that Amy loves John or whatever in a box. And this secret literally just reproduces those secrets. So you get something of that sort of intimacy. The example I wasn't able to find a good slide of was by an English artist called Verdi Yehuda, who did a book called The Dancer. And to this day, and she's never corrected me, or the wrapper, which is like a book binding cover, and it's sort of got an elasticated string that holds it together. Whether that's intended to be part of it or not, I always think it is, because you're getting into this very personal account of a dancer that was on top of her mother's ornament on top of a dresser after she died, where she kept her precious things. And you have these daguerreotype style photographs of those objects. It's you really feel that you're looking at something that nobody else can see. And the other aspects about playing with these qualities of the book are exemplified in the work of an artist called Ken Campbell, who, like Ron King, has supposedly given up making artist books for several years. And Campbell's speciality is to use every process that's available every print process, and he puts the page within the page. So you've got the idea here of multiple pages floating on other pages. And he also employs type, which is sort of and ornaments that are ornaments rather, and blanks and cancellations that are type high. So he's playing about with all the typecase that's possible. The Father's Garden is actually about a rabbi who can't get to Jerusalem, so he imagines his garden is Jerusalem with the 8 gates, and he prays at the 8 gates in it. And Broken Rules, another book by Ken Campbell, is in the Gnostic tradition, there was a theory that Christ had a double, and this is what this book is about. And again, it employs this sort of, on the right, you can see these type-high ornaments. Well, we looked at large books. Now we ought to look at a very small book. And this is about 5,000 times the size of it. And there is a recreation of this in one of the exhibits upstairs of this. And it's taken little cuttings from the Daily Mirror newspaper, which is a very populist newspaper in the UK. And it's got this sort of perfect binding, and it's just glued very simply. So it's a flip book, and you can sort of fit it in your hand very, very easily. And you can also play about with all the other bits of the book, the index, the running title, everything about it. They're there for grabs. And here's James Lee Byers, and it's called PIITL, which stands for Poor is in the Louvre. And it's just playing with the NRF, Nouvelle Revue Française, type, their covers, which are identical. Now, again, going back to my manifesto, I propose also that you could take away from the format, get it really down to basics. So my first example is Ian Hamilton Finlay, 30 signatures to silver catches. Now, a signature is a way of identifying a sort of tally that identifies a box that a Pittenweem fisherman would put his catch into. So on the cover here, you can see Ocean Hunter. That's the name of a trawler. And likewise, this is the boat is the Paragon here. But it's made very, very simply. It's literally just one staple at the left-hand side, and it's just one image. There's actually one folding image, a page that goes out of this. Now, my real favorite book is the next one. Yoko Torauki, Ebb and Flow, Coracle Press, London, 1988. And this literally is just one sheet of paper, very, very large sheet of paper. And it's painted red on one side and blue on the other. And then it's torn, so you get the white edge between the red and the blue. And this operates as a book, so you can turn, say, the red bit on the top left to over, and it would operate like a page mixing the red and blue that way. But it also could be extended on its wooden end pages as a leporello, and it would work as a three-dimensional object as well. Now, I want you to recall the Fiona Banner stops, and we have now Jaroslav Kozlowski. And this is working on a chapter of Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. And he's taken out all the text and just left the punctuation marks there. So again, it's drawing attention to what makes a book. And this is one I made myself earlier, called Strange, for an exhibition at Chelsea Space. And actually the printer for this was Dennis Mariner, who was taught by Dieter Roth at Watford School of Art way back in the 60s. And what I've done here is I've taken Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, and I don't know whether I've taken out every other word but the adjectives, or just taken the adjectives out. It's hard to think conceptually which way round this is. But I'm playing around with text as a physical thing. You could do this on an e-book, but it wouldn't work as well to have this in your hand and the play of the pages. And it's quite interesting. You can see how bad a writer Defoe was, but he repeats the same adjective in very close proximity. So what happens when we take it to the web? I know we're going to have a more in-depth talk about this, but I just want to make a few points. In fact, the electronic made making artist books easier in the first place. So almost anybody can make a book now. They have access to a printer, and that's practically all you need. So the first sort of product is a sort of outpouring of zines and book publications. And I've got, this isn't out of focus, this is deliberately how they have it. This is the One Star Press in Paris, and it's effectively a print-on-demand artist book situation, and there's now about 400 artists in the stable. My next example is Sarah Jacobs. As a librarian at Chelsea, I met her, and one of the really terrible things for an art librarian buying artist books is having somebody come in who really likes what they're doing, and you hate it, and you've got to be very gentle in saying, oh, maybe you should do this, or another library would like that. And I actually told her I think your idea would work best on the web. And she went away and did some hyperlinked work. But now she's gone back to using the web and electronic production to make physical books. And this is her work deciphering the human chromosome 16. And the contents, the pages have this sort of hidden moire pattern text of all these references to DNA numbers and things like that. And on top, there are various text things as well. So she's playing, so the physical book is actually coming back. Now, there's such an organization as Library of the Printed Web, and the idea being here is that Paul Soulalis, who's based at Rhode Island School of Design, you can download a book, but he also sells printed copies. So that's sort of like straddling both worlds in it too. So I think the book isn't dead. These are two photographs of the 2015 art book fair at PS1 in Queens. And thousands of people are coming. I think last year there was like 6,500 people. So the artist book isn't dead. I really just like to reaffirm that taking away the information burden on the book has freed it up to be so much to other people. It's haptic. It's a wonderful object. And often I think that I get fed up with artist books. Oh, not another artist book. And then somebody does something so wonderful with the format that I say, wow, I never thought of that. And every review that I've written of artist books has always been from this perspective, well, two perspectives. One, why has the artist decided to make a book, not make a painting or do a performance? And does it tell me something I didn't know about the world? And if it passes those two criteria, it's a wonderful artist's book. And finally, I'm going to, and on a note of a defense for the artist book, and that is that the physical book, scientists have said that it's a good cure for Alzheimer's, senility, and it sort of promotes empathy. So enjoy the book. Thank you very much. Yeah. We've got 10 minutes for questions. And if you'd like to come down to the front to ask the question, I'll then rebroadcast the question and then hope to answer it. Sorry? The question is how three-dimensional is the Killings book? And it's in a box, and there are, I think, 5 or 6 pages made from a coat. So it's quite, the pages, the leaves rather, I should say, are quite thick. So it's about 5 inches, and it's very tactile. You can feel the fur, obviously. Well, I think I've been let off with good behavior, I think. Thank you.